Welcome to Fast Politics, Congressman Greg Casar.
Hey, here we are.
We're reacting to the breaking news that your state, Texas, is somehow going to do this insane redistricting, which will, I think we can all take a top line here and go Donald Trump is worried about losing the House of Representatives because he's doing a lot of wildly unpopular stuff. So he's decided to make Republicans, and they're happy to do it because they're completely just an arm of the Trump presidency now, redistrict in order to make it so he won't lose the House of Representatives. Is that fair? Is that what we're watching happen in real time?
Yeah, basically, Trump doesn't have a plan for winning the midterm elections. So this is his plan for rigging those elections before we ever get a chance to vote. So all these folks, of course, ask me a great question all the time. What do we do to stop all of the awfulness and the craziness? And we oftentimes have said, let's organize for the midterm elections. Then now Trump wants to screw that up now by radically, racially gerrymandering Texas in a way we've never seen before. And that's part of what I think is really scary and new about this, is that Texas is already illegally gerrymandered to the hilt. But now Trump is pushing an even more illegal gerrymander, basically shredding the Voting Rights Act as we know it. And if he's allowed to do it in Texas and in Central Texas, where I'm based, then he wants to spread that all over the country. He's already saying that.
There is no precedent for this, for a president saying, I'm going to lose, so let's change the maps. It's I feel like Eric Holder, it's I don't know, it's like cheating plus, 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 right? I think Texas has really been this kind of lab where Trump has been able to sort of do crazy stuff, and the leadership has really been so partisan and so insane that they've been happy to do it. But talk to me about what this map looks like.
This is really sick. Basically, this is a kind of map that was supposed to be made illegal by the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Right.
What MLK marched for, LBJ signed it, handed the pen to MLK after he signed the Voting Rights Act. This sort of activity was supposed to be banned by that. Basically, what they do, and what Trump explicitly said he wanted to do, was had the DOJ send a letter to Texas saying there are multiple districts where most of the voters are people of color, and we don't like that anymore. Get rid of it. And Texas is supposed to be addressing the flooding that just killed
Right. And this
all of these
special
people.
section, this special session is
The legislature is supposed to be
flooding.
together about flooding. Instead of respecting Texans' lives, instead of recognizing the deaths of young girls and so many others, they are just pushing through this plan. And like you just said, Molly, there's not even Texas Republican officials or Congress people that say they're for this. They all privately say they're against it because they're screwing up their own districts and screwing over their own constituents. It's just one man in Mar-a-Lago who is saying he wants to pick the members of Congress from Texas rather than Texas voters. And now they've released a map that does things like merge my district here in Central Texas with joining Congressman Doggett's district, essentially getting rid of a Latino seat and merging it into just one Democratic seat now that we're put in the same place. They've gone and completely changed the historic district in Houston that was Barbara Jordan's and Mickey Leland's and Sheila Jackson Lee's, and completely changed it. All of this is to say they're suppressing the votes of millions of working class Texans and Latino Texans and Black Texans, and they think they can get away with it. And if the Supreme Court rubber stamps it, Trump has already said, okay, 5 from Texas, then he wants to go to Missouri and take one there, take a few from Ohio, and make it so that by the time we vote in the midterms, he's basically already made it so the House can't hold him accountable.
Explain how gerrymandering works and why this is actually kind of a gamble for him.
The way gerrymandering usually works, and it should be illegal, to be clear, I believe every Democrat, I think, in Congress right now has voted for getting rid of gerrymandering and just having independent commissions across the country. But our problem right now is you have blue states with these commissions, and then states like Texas
Red
that
states
violate
where
all the
they just
rules,
cheat. Yeah.
and that's a
Yeah.
problem. But generally, you have the Republican members of Congress gerrymander their maps, which is bad, but it usually results in those Republican incumbents having their districts the way they want them, and then they make themselves safe by creating these Democratic districts. In this case, Donald Trump's White House drew the maps, or maybe it was
Right.
Mar-a-Lago. And then we had a bunch of hearings, 3 hearings, not a bunch. I mean, actually, paltry 3 hearings this last week. And the Republicans in the legislature kept saying, we don't have a map. We're just having hearings with no map. Basically, they're still waiting on the email from the White House. And then today, the email landed. They publish a map, and it's Trump that drew it. And so that means that some of these Republican members of Congress will represent totally different areas than they're used to. And that gives us a chance to run great candidates against them. But they did try to shore themselves up and basically crack minority communities apart into a bunch of different districts to dilute their votes and get rid of Democratic members in the process.
It's funny because it's like there's so many parts of this story that are like Trump knows he's losing. And so Trump is trying to figure out ways to cheat. Explain to us what the next step is with the gerrymandering.
With the gerrymandering, they have one more hearing, supposedly this Friday. And so we are going to mobilize everyone we can who cares about our democracy to come out against the map on Friday. Then they'll try to jam it down everyone's throats. The hope is that we draw this out. We don't let them win here in the next few days. And Texas has a great tradition of filibusters, like Wendy Davis's filibuster against abortion restrictions, of quorum breaks, where Democrats, if they leave the state, actually under our Constitution, then the legislature shuts down. And so they could leave and quorum break and demand that the session be about flooding, not about carrying Donald Trump's water. We can drag that fight out. And then we need everyone listening in today to be calling their governor, calling their legislators to stop this from happening in Texas. Because if people like Governor Gavin Newsom keep pushing that they'll retaliate against Greg Abbott, if more governors get involved, that's our real chance to stop this. Because if they could just get away with this, I mean, Trump wants to spread it like wildfire. So we got to drag this out, support brave legislators that drag it out, and then get the whole country involved.
This is a really good point. Like, this should be a line in the sand. If you care about democracy, you don't want governors fucking with congressional maps. Period, paragraph. If the census gives you more numbers in different districts, you change the maps. But you don't change the maps because you have an unpopular incumbent who might lose the House.
That's right. I mean, right now, Trump knows that if the Democrats regain the House, then we're investigating the Epstein files and more. We could subpoena all of the folks that are doing corrupt business deals with his family. I mean, Trump remembers last time that we took the House, how he got investigated and impeached, and how that helped ultimately bring Trump's presidency to a halt. I mean, he wouldn't be able to pass all these horrible bills that kick people off their health care if Democrats take the House. And so instead of trying to win the election fair and square, he wants to change the lines right now, and we've got to stop it. We all have to get involved and say, there's got to be a cost to Trump and Abbott if they go through with this.
There's a number of interesting things happening in your state, and I would love you to talk first about the flooding, because there seems like there's some breakdown of emergency communication with the flooding. Talk us through what you're seeing on that, what sort of culpability there with the flooding is, and where you think that takes us.
I think clearly there were failures at every level of government, and we need to look into those failures, not because it's a blame game or political, but because if we want to respect the dead and then protect the living, we need to know what we did right and what went wrong. It seems clear there were issues at the local level. The state of Texas also denied grants to the local governments to put in alert systems that they needed. We need to ask questions about why. And then at the federal level, we have whistleblowers that said that Kristi Noem, who's Trump's cabinet secretary above all of this, delayed search and rescue for 72 hours before approving it. That's not something you should think about for 72 seconds. So we've got to actually really look into why that is. The head of search and rescue at FEMA resigned over this. They're trying now to smear him, but I think it's important we look into that. And then also the National Weather Service and NOAA, who are the scientists that help us know when a storm is coming and communicate that to local communities, they've been deeply understaffed. And so I myself and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett led an effort to ask an independent inspector general to do an investigation. And that independent investigator, who's separate from the Trump administration, said they're going to look into that understaffing and how that affected our response to this storm. None of this can bring back the dead, but we know there's going to be more storms in Texas, more floods. We've got to protect people from that. And this understaffing is happening right now where there can be hurricanes in all sorts of parts of the country. So we got to be looking into it now. This is what the legislators should be looking into. Instead, Republican members are trying to ignore the floods, cover up the Epstein files, and then just protect Trump in the next election. I mean, it's just cowardice at its core. And even worse, they're doing it by trying to shred the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They took us back pre-1965 on Medicaid. Now they want to take us pre-1965 on voting rights. It is the example of what it looks like when these just wealthy, powerful guys just do everything they can to protect themselves and don't care about who they screw over in the process.
There's a lot of drama happening in Texas with the John Cornyn and Ken Paxton drama. So Ken Paxton,
I get the whole bag of goons confused sometimes too.
I mean, and the Ken Paxton story is so, because I think of Ken Paxton as the guy who overturned Roe v. Wade, really, who was the person who enacted SB8, the sort of guy who put the wheels in motion on that. But he also is an adulterer. Explain to us what's happening there. And by the way, this story, like, you couldn't make it up. It's so incredibly craven.
I mean, look, at this point, poll after poll after poll seems to indicate that Ken Paxton, who has been indicted for corruption, who was actually impeached by his own Republican colleagues in the House, is likely really the front runner for the Republican nomination by far. So I expect he will be the front runner. And so I just think that a very clear focus on the fact that he's been ripping off Texans, the fact that, yeah, he's the guy trying to deport dreamers. I mean, people who have been here their entire lives, he wants to kick out. He was, at January 6th, he's the guy that was trying to overthrow and overturn the election. This is Trump's guy, but he is, frankly, not supported by even some Texas Republicans, who voted to impeach him. So it creates a real opportunity for us to take the Texas Senate seat on the Democratic side. I know a few names have been tossed out there. I know Colin Allred is running. We're going to, support our Democratic nominees strongly there. And of course, he's got all sorts of, Paxton, of course, as you mentioned, has his personal issues, but frankly, you don't even have to start. I mean, he is corrupt and, he literally was doing business deals with folks that have wind up in jail. He's got federal indictments and federal investigations into the way that he's handled his money. And so it is just a disaster for him and creates a real opportunity for us. So if Republicans gerrymander and create their seats a little bit more vulnerable, if they've got Ken Paxton at the top of the ticket, then we've got to run like we've never run before in Texas. And we have some real pickup opportunities. At the same time, we've got to stop the gerrymandering plan, because even if we do an excellent job trying to flip some of these seats, at the end of the day, they shouldn't be allowed to suppress the votes of millions of people and, frankly, steal at least some of these seats away from us.
I just don't see where this is fair at all.
It's deeply unfair and should send a chill down the spine of every American. I mean, we talk a lot about gerrymandering. I just kind of want to give you a sense of what this looks like. What it means is you've got usually, neighborhoods that have more Black voters or more Latino voters. And what these guys in the White House go and do is they go and say, this neighborhood, we're going to chop it into 4 or 5 or 6 little pieces so that those folks can't all vote together for the person that's going to represent them. And then they get stuck in districts with folks that do not care about them, who do not represent those neighborhoods, in fact, might resent those voters. And they're just a little slice of a district to be represented by, Chip Roy, for example. That's not going to be his priority. if some of these neighborhoods get put into his district, or Troy Nels. You could look that up. They just are
I
not.
don't need to look up Troy
Yeah,
Nels.
yeah, exactly. And so
I
look,
would,
you
nor
get it.
do I want to.
But for
Yeah.
the folks that are listening, this isn't just about me as a member of Congress or somebody else.
Right.
It's those voters get purposefully targeted because they are people of color and stuck
Right.
into a district where their voices won't matter. That's literally what we tried to get rid of in 65. And then on top of all that, the outcome that they try to get is that no matter how unpopular Trump's policies are, Trump gets his selected members of Congress. It's hard to not sound alarmist in this, but it's that alarming.
Texas isn't like Missouri. It's a purple-ish state. It's becoming more purple. But you have a governor and an attorneys general who both are very crazy and very into enacting their own very right-wing legislation. Why do you think that is? And I know there are a lot of talented Democrats in the Texas State House. Do you feel like you're able to keep some of this at bay? Or, I mean, why is it so? It feels like it's just the state feels way more right wing than their constituents are.
That's exactly right. That's the whole Texas contradiction, is that, demographically, we're not that different from, say,
Right.
California. We're just heavily underorganized.
Right.
Our Democratic parties are so much more underfunded. Our state Democratic Party is puny in funding compared to traditional swing states that you could think of, like, Michigan or Nevada. And then you also have to recognize we're usually ranked at the very bottom of voter turnout of all of the states. There are so many people who rightly say, it doesn't matter if I vote or not, it seems like the same crazy stuff happens. And so we've got to get to a place where in this state of over 30 million people, we organize at scale. And right now, I know a lot of folks listening have heard about great candidates we've had, from Wendy Davis to Beto O'Rourke. But if we just go in every 4 or 6 years and hope that in the last few months of election we can rally as a country and pull it off, we just don't get there. We have to have a longer organizing strategy. And I think we could start it right now. Just up the road from where I am right now, we had an event in East Austin with Jasmine Crockett and Beto O'Rourke and Joaquin Castro and James Tallarico, Gina Hinojosa, myself. We were hoping, maybe 1,000 people would show up. We blew past that, well over 3,000 folks on very short notice. And like planning anything else, usually you have a RSVP count and then you expect the numbers are going to go down a little bit. You don't usually
Right.
think they're going to triple on you. So right now is when we can start organizing the state so that we have a real shot at beating Ken Paxton come next November.
It just strikes me that it feels very out of whack over there. So how many sort of voters do you have in your state?
Yeah, in my state, the percentage of registered voter turnout, of course, changes when it's a governor's race versus a
Right.
presidential, but we usually rank there in 48th, 49th, or 50th
Wow. Yeah.
turnout of the 50 states. And so what we badly need to do, if we got those folks participating, I think you'd have a totally different election. Folks argue Texas is really a blue state, or is Texas a purple state or a red state? I call it an underorganized state. I
Yeah.
mean, we identified after the last election that there's about 1 million anti-Greg Abbott voters who we just never talk to. But it's a big state. It takes a lot of resources. And so part of what we got to do is lift up the next generation of, leadership, be it elected officials and activists, who are going to go out there and do the work of going and talking to folks. Because I think too often we've kind of gotten comfortable in our existing Democratic seats and people just govern over their Democratic area. And we've got to be going out there and reaching out. That's why I've gone to multiple Republican districts myself and held town halls there. I was, out in the Texas Panhandle where they haven't seen a congressional Democrat in forever. It was just me, and you had thousands of people in an auditorium. So we've got to be willing to go out there to those rural areas where, Democrats traditionally don't go, but people are waiting to hear from us. So that's what I'm committed to doing. We're going to fight this redistricting plan with everything we've got in us. And here in Central Texas, where I'm sitting right now, they're trying to merge me and my fellow congressman next door. And we're going to fight that like hell, because It is just deeply wrong to try to get rid of us by merging districts together like ours.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Molly.
Thank you.